everyone, Stella Chung here filling in for Akeem with your fix of entertainment news. We've got updates on which shows and movies are being affected by the ongoing writer's strike, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 cleaned up at the box office this weekend, and word got out the Multiverse of Madness writers weren't able to watch WandaVision while also working on the Doctor Strange sequel. Let's get into it. If you've been following the news, you probably know the Writers Guild of America went on strike last week to demand an increase in minimum wages and standardization of residual or royalty payments. As you might expect, 11,000 TV and movie writers going on strike has disrupted a number of productions. On the movie front, Marvel Studios' Blade was slated to start shooting in June, but will instead be delayed. This will be the second time this has happened, as the project lost its original director back in September, allegedly over script issues. It was just announced True Detective creator Nick Pizzolatto had signed on to handle writing duties, but it looks like that'll have to wait. The fifth and final season of Stranger Things was originally slated to begin shooting in June, but that's also been put on hold. Executive producers the Duffer Brothers showed their solidarity on Twitter, stating that writing does not stop the second filming begins. Cobra Kai, another Netflix fan favorite, is currently shooting season 6, but its writers are officially pencils down and no longer showing up to set, which may very well have an impact on the finished product. The writers for Showtime's Yellow Jackets were apparently one day into working on season 3 when the strike began, so that will likely delay production in a huge way. Meanwhile, season 3 of HBO's Hacks halted filming altogether. Late night shows like Jimmy Kimmel Live and The Tonight Show are also on hiatus, along with Saturday Night Live. A few shows aren't affected, and we told you on Friday that Star Wars and/or showrunner confirmed the final script was completed prior to the strike. So it looks like production will continue, albeit without writers on hand. Prime Video's The Lord of the Rings: The Rings of Power is set to wrap filming in the next few weeks, but it will be doing so without the involvement of 2 of its executive producers, who are bound by strike rules. The Apple TV series Severance also had its production halted. WGA members picketed outside York Studios in New York City alongside IATSE members, and Teamsters refused to cross the picket line. Comedian and everything ruiner Adam Conover fired off this absolute chef's kiss of a tweet. Hey Apple, no more episodes of your hit show about workers using collective action to fight back against an exploitative tech company until you give back your real-life workers a fair deal. Movies and shows not getting made is obviously not much fun for anyone, but the reasoning behind the strike is extremely sound. Conover appeared on CNN last week to offer a little context. Check it out.
So I'd point out the fact that David Zaslav, the CEO of Warner Brothers Discovery, which is, the parent company of the network I'm talking to you on right now, was paid $250 million last year, $250 million. That's about the same level as what 10,000 writers are asking him to pay all of us collectively, all right? So I would say if you're being paid $250 million, Ted Sarandos made about $50 million last year. These companies are making enormous amounts of money. Their profits are going up. It's ridiculous for them to plead poverty when the writers who are making their shows, some of them are not able to pay their rent or their mortgages. I literally know writers who have had to go on assistance because they have not been able to make their year. If you look at these companies, they're making more money than ever. It's the people who make the shows for them that are making less.
Speaking of things making obscene amounts of money, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 opened this weekend, and it was the lowest start of summer Disney Marvel movie to date. But it still raked in $282 million globally, so it did just fine by mortal movie standards. Volume 3 pulled in $114 million domestically, which is a considerable dip compared to the second film's $146 million domestic gross in 2017, but still a big step up compared to Star-Lord and Company's $94 million debut in 2014, back when no one had heard of these a-holes. For the last decade, Marvel Studios has pretty consistently released a new movie every year around late April or early May, not counting the MCU's 2-year movie hiatus during the pandemic. Adjusted for inflation, Guardians Volume 3 had the weakest opening of any of these, and while that's not too surprising putting it up against all 4 Avengers movies, it pulled in $73 million less than last year's Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, which does raise the question of whether audiences have Marvel fatigue, or superhero fatigue in general. Speaking of Multiverse of Madness, if the Doctor Strange sequel seemed a bit wonky following the events of WandaVision, there's a good reason for that. The Multiverse writers weren't actually able to see the Disney Plus series, even though its events directly set up the movie. Speaking to Vanity Fair, actress Elizabeth Olsen discussed rewatching scenes from the movie and the show, saying it's a similar arc in Multiverse of Madness that it is in WandaVision. There could be parallel stories being told there of dealing with grief and loss. I proposed that to the writers of Multiverse. I said, do you know what we're doing in WandaVision? Have you seen it? And no, they had not seen it because it wasn't finished yet. So to really bring all of this home, maybe Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3's diminishing returns aren't so much a symptom of superhero fatigue as they are of the last phase of the MCU spreading itself a little too thin. And hey, maybe, in addition to being paid fairly, writers should all be on the same page when they're expected to craft a massive, interconnected narrative across multiple productions. Just throwing that out there. Anyways, Guardians Volume 3 absolutely slaps. I laughed, I cried, and I cried some more in the theater in public. So even if you've been lukewarm on the MCU, this very might be worth taking a shot. I mean, I am very curious to see what James Gunn does with the future of DC movies. There's your fix for Monday, May 8th. For everything going on in the world of gaming, I've got you covered in that department too. And to keep up to speed on everything movies, TVs, superheroes, comic books, video games, and so on, keep it right here on IGN. I'll see you next time.